Can you hear me, madam? Hello? Hello, madam?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
Okay. Yes, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the online education organized by the Education Department of Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai. So today we are going to be studying the subject science for standard 9th, and the topic is study of sound. So today is the third session in the series, and we are going to study today about sonar and the human ear. My name is Vishal Sudhir Chaudhary, and I am from the Kurar Village MPS English Secondary School. Right. So now the topics that we are covering in this chapter is relating to sound waves, velocity of sound, reflection of sound, the human ear, and the various types of sound, that is audible, infra, and ultrasound. Right. Let us just briefly revise whatever concepts that we had studied in the previous class. Okay. So sound is a form of energy which creates a sensation of hearing in our ears. Sound energy travels in the form of waves, and a medium is necessary for the propagation of the sound waves. Okay, so that we had seen previously about how sound travels in the form of waves, and those waves are in the form of longitudinal waves, right? So sound waves give rise to a chain of compressions and rarefactions in the medium. So as you can see, compressions are regions of high pressure where particles have come close to each other, whereas rarefactions are regions of low pressure where particles have moved away from each other. So sound waves move in the form of these alternate bands of compressions and rarefactions. Okay. Then sound waves move in the form of longitudinal waves. So in a longitudinal wave, the particles of the medium oscillate about their mean positions in a direction parallel to the propagation of the wave. So we know very nicely that, as you can see, if you can focus on a single particle shown in the red color, you can see that the particle is just moving left to right. That is, it is vibrating or oscillating at its mean position. But the wave, as you can see as a whole, is going from the left hand side to the right hand side. So you can see the direction of motion of the particle and the direction of motion of the wave, they both are parallel to each other, and such a wave is a longitudinal wave. Okay. Then next, a sound wave can be shown in the form of a graph. At any moment during the propagation of sound wave, we can find alternate bands of compression and rarefaction of the medium, that is bands of high and low densities. So these bands can be shown as vertical lines. So wherever you have compression, you can see those lines are very close to each other and form a dark band. Whereas in the regions of low pressure, that is and rarefactions, the lines move away from each other. Right. So this is how the waves can be shown. So the compressions and rarefactions can also be shown in the form of a graph where compressions represent a peak, whereas a rarefaction represents a valley, right? Then next concept that we had studied was about velocity of sound. So the distance covered by a point on the wave in unit time is the velocity of the sound wave. We know that velocity equals to distance upon time. So any point on the sound wave covers a distance equal to wavelength lambda in time period t. Thus, the velocity is given by v equals to nu into lambda. We know 1 upon t equals to nu. So on substituting that, we get velocity equals to wavelength upon time period. That means v equals to lambda upon t. Okay. The other concept that we had studied was how does the velocity of sound vary with different changes in conditions. So we know that variation in temperature is what? The velocity of sound is directly proportional to the square root of the temperature. Then variation in density, velocity of sound is inversely proportional to the square root of density, and variation of molecular weight is velocity of sound is inversely proportional to square root of molecular weight. Okay. Then in the previous class, that is in the second session, we had studied about the types of sound. So we know audible sound has a frequency range of 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. Then infrasound has a frequency range lower than 20 hertz, and ultrasound has a frequency range that is higher than 20,000 hertz. Okay. Then audible sound. The limits of hearing of the human ear are 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. The human ear can hear sounds frequencies in these range. These sounds are called as audible sounds. Human ears cannot hear frequencies lower than 20 hertz and higher than 20,000 hertz. Right? That is the range in which we humans can hear two sounds. Then next is infrasound. Sound waves with frequencies smaller than 20 hertz are called infrasound. the sound produced by a pendulum, and the sounds generated by the vibration of the Earth's crust just before an earthquake are the examples of infrasound. Okay, then the next type is ultrasound. Sound waves having frequency greater than 20,000 hertz, that is 20 kilohertz, are called sound ultrasound. Dogs, mouse, bats, dolphins, etc. have a special ability to hear ultrasonic sounds. They can sense some noise which are inaudible to us humans. Children under 5 years of age and some creatures and insects can hear frequencies up to 25,000 hertz, right? Now, the next concept that we had studied was about the reflection of sound. As you can see, sound obeys the same laws that apply to the laws of reflection of light, right? So, as you can see here, we have a hard plywood to which we have kept perpendicular a soft wood piece which acts as a partition, right? On either side of that soft wood piece we have kept cardboard tubes through which the sound waves can flow through, right? So if you try to listen to a stopwatch kept on the other side, the sound waves can be heard very clearly. The ticking sound of the stopwatch can be heard. This means what? The sound obeys the laws of reflection, right? Then the next concept we studied was echo. So an echo is a repetition of the original sound because of reflection from sun surface. At 22 degrees Celsius, the velocity of sound in air is 344 meters per second. Our brain retains this sound for a 0.1 second time interval. Thus, for us to be able to hear a distinct echo, the sound should take more than 0.1 seconds after starting from the source to get reflected and come back to us. That means we can determine the minimum distance between the source and the reflecting surface as follows. We know speed equals to distance upon time. Therefore, distance equal to speed multiplied by time. So we can write 344 multiplied by 0.1, that equals to 34.4 meters, right? So that means the total distance from the source to the reflecting surface and then back again to the source where the listener is, the total distance traveled is 34.4 meters. Thus, to be able to hear a distinct echo, the reflecting surface should be at a minimum distance of half of the above, that is 17.2 meters, right? Then the next concept was reverberation. Now, sound waves get reflected from the walls and the roof of a room multiple times. Repeated reflection of sound waves from the walls combine to build up what seems like continuous sound. This causes a single sound to be heard not once but continuously, and this is called as reverberation. Okay, the time between successive reflections of a particular sound wave reaching us become smaller, and the reflected sounds get mixed up to produce a continuous sound of increasing loudness which cannot be heard clearly. So reverberation is a very undesirable characteristic of reflection of sound. So we will not want reverberation to take place whenever you have some sound source, right? So if you are in an auditorium, or if you are in a classroom, or if you are in a lecture hall, you will not want the sound to be persistent in the room, right? Because it will not allow you to listen to the sound of the speaker properly. So what can be done? Some auditoriums, public halls, or buildings are considered acoustically poor because of reverberation. So to reduce reverberation, the roof and walls of auditoriums are generally covered with sound absorbing materials, means the bad conductors of sound, right? Means bad reflectors of sound. Such materials are compressed fiber boards, rough plaster, or curtains. Even the materials of the seats is chosen such that it absorbs the sound waves to the desired extent. Okay, now let us move on to the concept that we are learning today, that is relating to sonar, right? So let us first of all see what is the full form of sonar. Sonar is the short form for sound navigation and ranging. It is used to determine the direction, distance, and speed of an underwater object with the help of ultrasonic sound waves. Sonar has a transmitter and a receiver which are fitted on ships or boats. Now, if you look at the diagram here, you have a ship, right? Now, on the ship, there are two devices fitted. One is a transmitter and the other is a receiver. Now, the transmitter transmits, that means it generates ultrasonic sound waves, right, which are directed towards the bottom of the sea floor, right? Now, this transmitted pulse travels downwards towards the ocean floor, right, and it strikes the seabed. Okay, when it strikes the seabed, the transmitted pulse gets reflected, and the reflected pulse comes up towards the ship and it is received by the receiver that is attached on the ship. Now the signals from the receiver go into a computer which can then calculate the time required for the sound wave to get reflected, and hence the distance between the ship and the seabed can be calculated. Okay, so sonar can be used to determine the depth of the sea. It is also used to calculate and observe any sunken ships or presence of any underwater object. Okay, the transmitter produces and transmits ultrasonic sound waves, right? These waves travel through the water, strike underwater objects and get reflected by them. The reflected waves are received by the receiver on the ship. So you can observe here what is happening. The ship is transmitting the sound waves in the ultrasonic sound region, right? Those waves travel downwards towards the ocean floor, right? And you can see when they strike the ocean floor or the seabed, they get reflected. Then once they are reflected, the reflected pulse is then captured by the receiver that is fixed on the ship. Okay, and then the computer or the sonar device then calculates the total time required for the sound waves, and hence the distance between the ship and the seafloor. Right, you can see the receiver converts the ultrasonic sound into electrical signals, and these signals are properly interpreted. The time difference between transmission and reception is noted. This time and velocity of sound in water give the distance from the ship of the object which reflects the waves. Sonar is used to determine the depth of the sea and to search underwater valleys, submarines, icebergs, sunken ships, etc. Now, if you look at this diagram here, you can see that the ultrasonic sound waves are sent towards the bottom of the sea. Now, once they are traveling, if at all, if there is any object in between, just like a ship or just like something like a submarine or something like a shoal of fish, if they are swimming inside, what will happen? The submarines or maybe the fish will reflect the sound waves back again, right? You can see the sound get reflected from the fish as well as from the ocean floor, right? Once these images are obtained, then what will happen? The sonar device will generate a image on the display, and from this the fisherman or the captain of the ship can tell exactly what kind of features are present underwater. Okay, so the first thing that we have done today is sonar. The next concept that we are understanding or going to study today is about sonography. Now, sonography technology uses ultrasonic sound waves to generate images of the internal organs of the human body. This is useful in finding out the cause of swelling, infection, pain, etc. The condition of the heart, the state of the heart after a heart attack, as well as growth of the fetus inside the womb of a pregnant woman are studied using sonography. So sonography is a non-invasive technique where no such operation is required, right? And it is a diagnostic method. Diagnostic procedure means the diagnosis of any disease can be done very nicely. So if you happen to have any pain in the abdomen, or if you have any stomach pain, then your doctor can ask you to get a sonography done. It is also called as ultrasonography, right? So when you get an ultrasonography done, the images of the abdomen inside can be obtained, right? And the sonography technician can write a report and inform the doctor about what is the problem within the abdomen. Okay, so this technique makes use of a probe and a gel. The gel is used to make proper contact between the skin and the probe so that the full capacity of the ultrasound can be utilized. Now what happens here is, if you can look at the diagram in the center, right, the probe which is held in the hand during the procedure, right, and there is a gel which is applied. So if you happen to have a sonography of your stomach, then what will be done? A gel like substance will be applied on your stomach, right, and the probe which is be held in the hand will be moved back and forth on your stomach, right. That probe is connected to that sonography machine, as you can see here, and the image will be obtained on the display, right. So what happens here is, the gel is applied to the skin outside the internal organ to be studied, right. So whatever the organ may be, the stomach or maybe the kidney or whatever sonography needs to be done, thus the gel will be applied just above the organ, right, and the probe will be moved in a back and forth motion by the technician, right. High frequency ultrasound is transmitted inside the body with the help of the probe. So what the probe does is, it will transmit ultrasonic sound waves which will go inside the body, and the ultrasonic sound wave will get reflected from the different organs which are present inside. Okay, The sound reflected from the internal organs is again collected by the probe and fed to a computer which generates the images of the internal organ. So that means the probe which is held in the hand by the technician has both the transmitter as well as the receiver. So the transmitter will transmit ultrasonic sound waves inside the body, right? From where it will get reflected from the different organs, and then reflected sound waves will again will be captured by the receiver that is fitted inside the same probe. Okay, so as this method is painless, it is increasingly used in medical practice for correct diagnosis, right? So maximum time of 10 to 15 minutes is required for the correct diagnosis. Okay, and then the report can be generated and the doctor can suggest further medication, further medicines, or if any operation is required, or if any other treatment is required. Okay, then next concept we are going to study today is about the human ear. Now the ear is an important organ of the human body. We hear sounds because of our ear. When sound waves fall on the eardrum, it vibrates. These vibrations are converted into electrical signals which travel to the brain through the nerves. Now, if you look at the diagram here, you can see the ear is classified mainly into three main regions, right? First is the outer ear, the segments that you can see from the outside, right? Which is the outer ear, right? The next is what? The middle ear, where you have the eardrum and a set of three bones, and the inner ear, which is the cochlea. We will see that in detail now. Okay. Now, the human ear can be divided into three parts. The first one is the outer ear, the second one is the middle ear, and the third one is the inner ear. Right? As you can see, the outer ear comprises of the outer ear, the pinna, then the auditory canal, that is the hole from which the air, the sound enters inside, and the tympanic cavity, means the cavity just before the eardrum. Right? The middle ear comprises of the eardrum, right? A chain of three bones, right? Okay. And then the middle ear or the inner ear comprises of the cochlea, the eustachian tube, and the auditory nerve. Now let us start into detail and study about all of these three parts, right? First one is the outer ear or the pinna. The outer ear collects the sound waves and passes them through a tube to a cavity in the middle ear. Okay. Now its peculiar funnel-like shape helps to collect and pass sound into the middle ear. So the function of the outer ear or the pinna is to just direct the sound waves inside. Now the human ears which has the pinna, it is not movable, it is fixed. But there are certain animals like dogs or cows who can move their pinna and they can direct the outer ear to listen sounds coming from different directions, right? So if you have observed a dog will continuously move his ears, or even the cows or buffaloes, they have those outer pinna which can be movable, which can be directed to listen to sounds coming from specific directions. Okay, then the next part is the middle ear. There is a thin membrane in the cavity of the middle ear called the eardrum. When a compression in the sound wave reaches the eardrum, the pressure outside it increases and it gets pushed inwards. The opposite happens when a rarefaction reaches there. So just inside the ear, after the cavity, there is a very delicate thin membrane which is present. When sound waves enter into the ear, what happens is the sound waves will strike this very thin membrane and the membrane will start vibrating with the same frequency of the sound wave. Okay, so what will happen? The pressure, as the pressure means as the compressions and rarefactions reach the eardrum, the high pressure and low pressure will start pushing and pulling the eardrum, right? So when the pressure outside decreases, the membrane pull gets outwards. Thus, sound waves cause vibrations of the membrane, right? As you can see here, you can see the sound waves are entering from the pinna into the external auditory canal, as you can see here. Now, once they have entered into the canal, they reach the eardrum and you can see the eardrum starts vibrating. Can you see the ear is vibrating, right? Now, this vibration is then transferred into a set of three bones which are present just behind the eardrum. And then these three bones will transfer the vibrations onto the inner ear, right? That we will see further. Okay, there is the inner ear. The auditory nerve connects the inner ear to the brain. The inner ear has a structure resembling the shell of a snail. It is called the cochlea. The cochlea receives the vibrations coming from the membrane and converts them into electrical signals which are sent to the brain through the auditory nerve. The brain then analyzes these signals and are converted, right, and which we perceive as your sound. Okay, so before we conclude the class today, we will just go through and revise all the concepts that we have done and studied today. Okay, so the first one that we studied today was about sonar, right? So sonar is a short form for sound navigation and ranging. It is used to determine the direction, distance, and speed of an underwater object with the help of ultrasonic sound waves. Okay, sonar has a transmitter and a receiver which are fitted on ships or boats. So if you can look into the image here, the ship on the bottom side has a transmitter and a receiver fitted. Okay, the transmitter will send ultrasonic sound waves directed towards the ocean floor or the seabed, right? This transmitted pulse will then strike the seabed and get reflected as the reflected pulse and will be received by the receiver, right? Then what happens? The transmitter produces and transmits ultrasonic sound waves. These waves travel through the water, strike underwater objects, and get reflected by them. The reflected waves are received by the receiver on the ship and they are analyzed by a device and it is shown on a display. Okay, as you can see here, see how the ship sends the ultrasonic sound waves towards the ocean floor or the seabed, and from there they strike whatever is present on it and get reflected. Okay, then next, the receiver converts the ultrasonic sound into electrical signals, and these signals are properly interpreted by a computer and are shown on a display. The time difference between transmission and reception is noted. That means the exact time when the pulse, when the ultrasonic sound is sent is noted, and the time required for the sound to get reflected and come back is noted and calculated. So it works just like an echo, right? So you can see the distance traveled will be twice, right? So whatever time required will be half, will be taken as a half, right? So from then that the calculation can be done, right? You can see the time difference between transmission and reception is noted. This time and velocity of the sound in water give the distance from the ship of the object which reflects the sound waves. So you can detect various underwater objects like a fish, like a shoal of fish, or maybe a submarine present underwater, maybe the different mountain ranges present inside the water. It can also be used to detect the depth of the ocean at that spot, right? You can see sonar is used to determine the depth of the sea and to search underwater hills, valleys, submarines, icebergs, as well as sunken ship. The famous ship Titanic was spotted using the sonar method. Okay. Then the next technique is sonography. Sonography technology uses ultrasonic sound waves to generate images of the internal organs of the human body. This is useful in finding out the cause of swelling, infections, and pain. Okay. It is also used to find out the condition of the heart, the state of the heart after a heart attack, as well as the growth of a fetus inside the womb of a pregnant woman are studying using sonography. So you might have observed pregnant women are asked to conduct a sonography every 1 or 2 or 3 months, depending upon the situation, right? So that it is checked whether the fetus, whether the baby inside a pregnant woman is having a proper growth or not. Okay, the sonography technique is a very harmless technique, means there is no such operation required, there is no need for the patient to get admitted, right? The process can be completed within a few minutes, hardly 10-15 minutes, and a report can be generated within a few hours, right? So you can have an initial diagnosis of what is the problem within the abdomen, right? Problems like kidney stones or gallbladder stones, or some problems related to intestines, swelling of the liver, right, swelling in the stomach, they can be detected by having a sonography procedure done. Okay, so let us see. This technique makes use of a probe and a gel. The gel is used to make proper contact between the skin and the probe so that the full capacity of the ultrasound can be utilized. Now if you can look into the diagram, the center part, you can see there is a probe which is held in the hand. Okay, so that probe is moved over the surface of the body where you want to visualize or image the internal organs, right? That probe is connected to a sonography device or a machine, which is just like a computer, and the images of the internal organs are generated on the screen. Now, a normal human being cannot analyze and understand the images which are present there. So, a sonography technician, a trained person, is present who is trained to identify the problems, identify the images which are shown on the screen, and then he will generate a report which the doctor will see. Okay, so let us see how it works. The gel is applied to the skin outside the internal organ to be studied. So we'll just apply a gel. Now, why the gel is there? The gel is there so that the ultrasonic sound waves coming from the probe can be transmitted very easily into the body, right? You need to note one thing, that the sound waves have to travel from the probe through the skin inside the body. The waves have to get reflected within the body through various organs, and the waves coming back means the reflected sound waves, the reflected ultrasonic sound waves should be able to come back through the skin and back into the probe in the form of reflected waves. So what happens is the gel which is applied right on the skin will allow these ultrasonic sound waves to pass through easily from the probe into the skin and back out again. Okay, so the gel is applied to the skin outside the internal organs to be studied. High frequency ultrasound is transmitted inside the body with the help of the probe. The sound reflected from the internal organ is again collected by the probe and fed to a computer which generates the images of the internal organ, as you can see on the right hand side. Okay, as this method is painless, it is increasingly used in medical practice for correct diagnosis. Diagnosis means to identify the problem or identify the disease. Okay, then the next part is about the human ear. The human ear is an important organ of the human body. We hear sounds because of our ear. So the human ear is a very delicate, very delicate organ, right? It is the human ear, the middle ear has those three set of bones which are the smallest bones in the human body. One interesting fact. Okay, let us see. We hear sounds because of our ear. When sound waves fall on the eardrum, it vibrates. These vibrations are converted into electrical signals which travel through the brain, through the nerve. Let us see. The human ear can be divided into three parts, that is the outer ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear. Please note here this diagram number 12.6 from the textbook. It is an important diagram. It may be asked right in the examination for you to draw a neat label diagram with a pencil. Okay, then you can see the three different parts of the human ear. The outer ear, which has the auditory canal, the pinna, the tympanic cavity. The middle ear comprises the chain of the three bones. Then you have the eardrum in the middle ear, and the inner ear contains the set of three bones. Then the cochlea, right, and the eustachian tube, which connects the nose and the ear together. Okay, then let us see the three parts in detail. The outer ear or pinna. The outer ear collects the sound waves and passes them through a tube to a cavity in the middle ear. Its peculiar funnel-like shape helps to collect and pass sounds into the middle ear. So as I've told you before, the function of the outer ear, that is a pinna, is to just direct the sound waves coming from different directions into the cavity of the ear. Okay, so if you want to hear sound from different direction, you can see we need to move our neck or rotate our neck. But certain animals, they have the ability to move the complete pinna all 360 degree. You can see if you have seen cows or buffaloes or dogs, some of them have the ability to move around their pinna. Okay, then middle ear. There is a thin membrane in the cavity of the middle ear called the eardrum. Now this is a very delicate part, right? If it happens to rupture or if it happens to break, you will not be able to hear anything, right? So all of you must be very careful. You should not insert any sharp objects inside the ear, right? Some people have a tendency to clean their ears by using those earbuds, right? But that is not to be done. It is a very dangerous thing. So when a compression in the sound wave reaches the eardrum, the pressure outside it increases and it gets pushed inwards. The opposite happens when a rarefaction reaches there. Now we have studied previously that sound travels in the form of longitudinal waves, in the form of compressions, that is high pressure zones, and rarefactions, that are low pressure zones. So when a compression reaches the eardrum, it will push it inside because of high pressure. right? Just after compression, there is a rarefaction, which is a low pressure, so it will pull it outside, right? So what happens when the successive compressions and rarefactions reach the eardrum one after the other? What will happen? They will constantly push and pull on the eardrum, and the eardrum will start moving with the same frequency of the sound, right? So the frequency of the sound will be transmitted onto the eardrum, right? Okay, so the sound wave thus cause vibrations of the membrane with the same frequency. Now what happens further? As you can see here in the diagram, the pinna helps to direct the sound waves inside the auditory canal, from where they reach onto the eardrum. As you can see, the eardrum starts vibrating with the same frequency of the sound, and then it transfers this into the inner ear, where the set of three bones which are just in contact with the eardrum also start vibrating with the same frequency, right? Inner ear. The auditory nerve connects the inner ear to the brain. The inner ear has a structure resembling the shell of the snail, and it is called as a cochlea. The cochlea receives the vibrations coming from the membrane through the three bones and converts them into electrical signals, which are sent to the brain through the auditory nerve. The brain analyzes these signals and we feel the sensation of hearing, right? So here what happens, once the eardrum vibrates, right, the eardrum will transfer these vibrations onto the set of three bones. The set of these three bones will transfer these vibrations to the cochlea, which is this spiral purple colored part. In reality, it's not purple colored, it's just shown here in the form of the diagram. Okay, so the spiral part will take these vibrations, and then these vibrations are converted into electrical signals, and these electrical signals are sent through the auditory nerve to the brain, right? And then the brain will do all the calculations, the brain will analyze this, and we will get the sensation of hearing, and we perceive as sound, right? So there are a set of few questions which I will want all the students to be doing. First is, what is sonar, right? So sonar stands for sound navigation and ranging. You need to define all of that. Then applications of sonar, as we had seen, sonar is used to determine the depth of the ocean. It is used to determine the presence of mountains, undersea valleys, right? It is used to find the presence of sunken ships and submarines. Okay, then how is sonography technology useful in medical diagnosis, right? So sonography technology is useful in determining the presence of illness or problem within the abdomen, right? It is helpful as it does not require any operations. It is a painless process. It can be completed in a short period of time. Okay, then you need to draw a neat level diagram of the human ear, as I had told you, the diagram number 12.6, I hope. Yes, this one, 12.6 from the textbook. You need to prepare and draw. And the last is, explain the working of the human ear. So you need to explain the working of the human ear, right, by describing the functions of the outer ear, middle ear, as well as the inner ear, right? So that is how we conclude the chapter. So in the next class, students, we will be doing the complete revision of the chapter, as well as all the numericals related to this chapter we will be discussing in detail, right? So if any students happen to have any doubts, you can please ask me. Please unmute and ask the question, students. Come on, whatever doubts you have, you can ask me. Yes, students. Hello. Yes, madam. Hello. Yes, students. Please ask any doubts if you have. Hello, madam. Hello.